Okay, the council chamber clock is a little slow, but iPhone says 6. So we're going to go ahead and get started. And a little bit of a different order of things. We have some special guests with us today, members of Boy Scout Troop 15. So I'm going to have you guys come up, introduce yourself, say your name and your school, and then we'll have you line up in front for the invocation, and then we'll have you lead us in the pledge if you don't mind. So come on up, guys. First one to the mic needs to pull it down a little bit, probably.
It don't take more than 3 minutes.
My name is Charles Long, and I go to Fletcher Middle School.
You can stand up in the front of the table here.
My name is Ben Merritt, and I go to Fletcher Middle School.
My name is Isaac Fairley, and I go to Fletcher Middle.
My name is Lauren Abraham, and I go to Fletcher Middle.
My name is Jonathan Lyman, and I go to Discovery.
My name is Steven Salvador, and I go to Cornerstone Cosmical Academy.
Awesome, welcome. And raise your hand if you live in Jacksonville Beach. Perfect. This is your future. These are our future leaders. And just so you know, in some of our mock votes that we just did, they want to raise your gas tax by 8,000%, 10,000%. And they want to take it, but they're going to use it to take over South Alabama. So creativity is not lacking here with this group. Oh, okay. Well, then I support that. So we had some practice, and now we are going to have the invocation delivered by Mr. Jansen, and then our guests will lead us in the pledge. Please rise.
Let us pray. Good and gracious Heavenly Father, today we receive a lot of prayer requests, and Lord, I just ask you that you extend your grace to those that are in need and provide them peace that passes all understanding. And Lord, I just ask you to be with our first responders and our military as they preserve our freedoms. And Lord, most of all, we thank you for your Son, Jesus Christ, and his Savior, for it's in his name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Go, boys.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. You guys can go ahead and take your seat.
Great job, guys.
This meeting is called to order. Councilmember Dumont? Here. Councilmember Golden? Here. Councilmember Jansen?
Here.
Councilmember Mesa?
Here.
Councilmember Nichols?
Here.
Councilmember Stokes?
Here.
Mayor Hoffman? Here. Moving on to approval of minutes, item A.
I move that we approve the minutes of the budget workshop held on August 8th, 2022.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. B.
Move that we approve the minutes of the budget workshop held on August 9th, 2022.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item C.
Move that we approve the minutes of the regular council meeting held on August 15th, 2022.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item D.
I move that we approve the minutes from the council briefing held on August 22nd, 2022.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Golding?
Yes, if everyone could look on page 1 of 2 in the section about the Gonzales Park update, the second paragraph, it said it was the consensus of the council to change the layout of the current location of the planned pickleball courts to add 2 additional courts totaling 4 courts at Gonzales Park. And I wanted to modify the minutes to add as long as it doesn't impact any other park amenities, because that was something that I think we all agreed that we wanted to make sure that the addition of the 2 pickleball courts wouldn't have a negative impact on the other amenities. So my motion would be to amend the minutes to add as long as it doesn't impact any other park amenities.
Is there a second? Second. We have a motion and a second. Discussion on the amendment. Mr. Nichols?
Obviously, it's going to impact somewhat. I would be inclined to say substantially impact another thing, because it's going to, a little bit of room might be taken off of the children's playground. So let's not say not completely impact, but substantially impact or whatever.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure though that the mention of our concern about any impact is in the minutes, and so I'd be willing to amend it to say, as long as it doesn't substantially impact any other park amenities.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion to amend the amendment. All in favor of the amendment? Please signify by saying aye. To say substantially? Back to the original amendment to add further clarification that not substantially impact any of the other amenities at the park. Any discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. That was it for minutes, right? Okay. On to announcements. I will go first and say happy birthday to our colleague Chet Stokes. We will honor you with our wonderful tradition of not singing happy birthday to you. So that's the gift that keeps on giving. Hope you have had a wonderful day. And also to let everyone know that there's going to be a Beaches Community Overdose Awareness Seminar on Thursday, September 15th. There's information that will be going out on our social medias and we sent to all of you on the council. Please spread the word. Opioid overdose deaths are on the rise, including here at the beaches, and it's something that is entirely preventable, that we need to spread some awareness about preventing and also learning how to treat an overdose quickly when one should happen. So please keep an eye out for that. Ms. Golding.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a few announcements I'd like to make. First of all, on August 29th, I wanted to let everyone know I attended a meeting at the City of Jacksonville. And in that meeting were the consultants Peters and Yaffe, who were hired by Jacksonville to work on safety improvements for Penman Road. And there was discussion about scheduling a community meeting so that Peters and Yaffe could do that presentation and the community could see what they are proposing. So that will be coming up soon, possibly in October or November. And we'll make sure to let everybody know when that does happen. Secondly, I wanted to mention that a member of our community passed away on August 31st. His name is Guy Boonsanong, and he was the owner of Buddha Thai Bistro. If you haven't had a chance to go to Buddha Thai Bistro, it's a wonderful family-owned restaurant in our community. Guy started the restaurant 12 years ago. He and his family are a wonderful family in the restaurant, and he have been a very special part of our community. But he had a tragic accident on Father's Day. It was a pool accident, and it landed him in the hospital in a coma for 74 days, and he passed away on the 31st. And I just ask everyone to please support Guy's family. He leaves behind a wife and 3 small kids. And I ask that you consider going to Buddha Thai Bistro, giving them your business so that we can continue to support this family who has provided this wonderful restaurant in our community. And then just a few things I wanted to mention. Tomorrow night, we're at 5:30, we're having a briefing to discuss the plan to fill the vacancy in our at-large seat 3 seat, and that's at 5:30, and I believe that's here. At 5:45, we will have our first public hearing on the budget adoption. So hope everybody, if you are interested in where your tax dollars are going, we are approving the first reading tomorrow night. And then also wanted to mention that on Wednesday, tomorrow night as well, at 7 p.m., Mayor Hoffman is going to be providing an overview of our 16 charter amendments that are going to be on the ballot November 8th. She will be at the Beaches Watch meeting at the Beaches Branch Library at 7 p.m. And it should be interesting because everybody needs to learn about what's on the ballot. So I hope that everybody will at least make an attempt to come out. If not, Beaches Watch will have a video of the mayor's presentation so everyone can learn about the ballot amendments. Thank you.
I'm already exhausted and tomorrow hasn't even started yet, so thank you for that reminder. Mr. Stokes.
Well, thank you, Mayor Hoffman, for the birthday wishes and for not singing, as always. I really appreciate that. I'd also like to just extend a congratulations to Kai and Michael, our new state representative for District 16. It's a very important position, covers all of our beaches communities, and always they are welcome here in front of this council, and that we hope that we'll see you a lot during your time as a state representative.
Thank you, Mr. Stokes. Any other announcements from council? Okay, courtesy of the floor to visitors, we do have a few cards today. A little bit out of our typical order, I did want to read a statement because all of the cards are with relation to the same issue. So I've gotten a lot of emails over the weekend and in the past few days, and I've been responding as I receive them, and I just wanted to kind of put my thoughts together a little bit. This is my own personal thoughts on this, and then we'll go to the speaker cards. But I'd like to say first and foremost, I'm so sorry that your safe and peaceful neighborhood was the site of such an awful event. I truly cannot imagine. Not only was a life lost and undoubtedly a family shattered, but your safe, quiet cul-de-sac will never be the same. As you know, we are experiencing firsthand short-term vacation rentals are no longer concentrated in the tourist and commercial areas and are making a steady march into the residential areas of Jacksonville Beach. The city is working within state and local laws as well as within its constrained resources to stay on top of this very quickly emerging and evolving industry. It's a constant struggle to balance this place where people want to vacation with the place that people live. But please know your city takes this very seriously, and we are working at the state and local level to impact this issue positively for our community. With that, Adeline Lamb, please come on up, state your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes to address the council. And I know you are speaking on behalf of another resident.
No, he has his own card.
Oh, okay.
He's an independent.
Okay. Then I'll call him up later.
Okay, can I just read it so I don't, because I'll go over. Okay.
Start with your name and address.
Adeline Lamb, 1696 Ocean Pond Court. I want to address the shooting and illegally operating short-term rental on Ocean Pond Court. This property has and is not permitted and has not submitted any applications for permitting as of 9/2, even though they were issued a warning by the city on 8/8 to do this. Since then, they've been allowed to continue to operate an undocumented, unpermitted, illegal business on our residential street. Since the warning given by the city, they have rented to 3 additional renters all over the occupancy laws. The first of these was 15 men. The second of these was 13 people and an unleashed dog that were in the front yard for over an hour. Then the 21 people on the night of the shooting. The police have verified and reported this on 2 of the 3 rentals. When I first started the process of filing the complaints, I stated that each rental is escalating. It is one thing to have a loud party, but a murder is an entirely different problem. This would have been avoided on our street if my initial complaints were listened to. We now have an 8-year-old that will not go out front without me standing next to her and lives in constant fear that the bad guys are going to rent it again the next weekend. I try to tell her that they won't, but really, who's stopping them? Every official I've spoken to claims Tallahassee has given rights to these properties through Airbnb and VRBO, but this is not one of those properties. This homeowner is outsmarting the city by not using the services that require them to prove permitting, knowing when caught, the city does nothing. We need the city attorneys to not live in fear of doing something to these illegally operating rentals. We need an injunction of relief filed on our behalf by the city. We meet all of the requirements, and it is not fair to us to have to incur the cost of hiring a private attorney to do this, although we will if needed. I know we are limited by laws and what we can do, but we need your help. This property is not being rented by a reputable company, therefore how can we hide behind laws provided to that company? This owner did not go to one house when he decided to rent it and give us his number. He and the rental company have ignored every one of my calls and emails, even prior to the shooting, even though the bylaws state this is a violation too. Since the shooting, we've heard nothing from either of them. We need you to understand this is who this owner is, and the slap on the wrist warnings are not going to change who someone is or if they value us as a community. This is lowering the value of our homes, and when operated, as they have shown they will do, creating an unsafe community that otherwise has been a relatively normal street. We will work with you, so please hear our need and work with us to get us back the street that we have known and loved for 14 years. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Lamb. Daniel Bartley.
It's going to be hard to follow.
Sorry, David.
Daniel Barley, I'm at 1605 Ocean Pond Court. Been a homeowner there since 1999. Been a Beaches resident since '89. married with 2 small children. One goes to Seabreeze Elementary, the other Fletcher Middle. And we 2 were awoken that evening, 8:25, which I'll never forget, by the gunshots and the parade of policemen and fire trucks up and down our street. Had to take our kids to school the next morning with police tape wrapped around the house 2 doors down from us. We would also like to know who's enforcing these laws, what can be done about it. Are these people going to be put in compliance and held responsible for these types of things? And ultimately, what can we do about this situation as a whole? And I just want to echo the sentiments of Ms. Lamb and probably everybody else sitting in that corner back there. This type of behavior in our community, in our street, and just around small children's and an assisted living home and a school 1 block away is unacceptable, and we would like your help and swift resolution to the matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barley. Kenneth Lamb?
For the record, can I just say I married up? Because I'm not going to do it well.
You may say that.
Yeah, all right. So I've learned that complex problems demand a coordinated approach to have a successful outcome. Unfortunately, when it comes to the short-term rental vacation rentals, there appears to be both a lack of understanding of how to apply current law and coordination to hold the owners accountable within the city of Jacksonville Beach. I'm here to utilize this public forum to highlight the apparent dysfunction inside the city of Jacksonville Beach's governmental response to the short-term vacation rental of 1649 Ocean Pond Court, while at the same time fully understanding there's only so much that you can do from an enforcement angle. The short-term vacation rental has consistently been the subject of violations of the current law. To voice our frustrations, we sought to partner with the city of Jacksonville Beach in order to garner compliance on the part of the owner. Unfortunately, all we received from the city of Jacksonville Beach was the runaround. When we notified the police, we were told to call code enforcement. When we called code enforcement, we received a phone call several days later informing us to notify the fire marshal. When we notified the fire marshal, we were then told the fire marshal doesn't work on the weekends to then notify the police. The environment creates one of non-compliance with current law, and it culminated in a recent homicide that occurred during a party in the front yard at 11 p.m. on a Thursday night. Instead, we need department and civil servants that take a personal invested interest in solving problems to guide citizens through the process to identify the solution. We shouldn't have to resort to looking on Google to find the answer after we've spoken with various city departments regarding this problem. It would be naive for me to believe that this issue is only applies to me. In fact, I'm sure there's members on this council that also live nearby these short-term vacation rentals. This example underscores the need to strengthen and clearly identify the process to hold these owners and businesses accountable. We must have a city that is able to handle complex problems by effectively coordinating to serve the citizens of Jacksonville Beach. Most of all, we must create an environment where criminals fear committing crime in Jacksonville Beach due to strong partnerships within those city departments, both internally and externally, rather than emboldening them due to ineffective, antiquated, and lazy problem-solving strategies.
Thank you, Mr. Lamb. Jennifer Card.
Good evening. My name is Jennifer Card. I live at 1693 Ocean Pond Court. As a single woman, the recent shooting has brought about my concerns not only for my safety, but my neighbors and their children. I've always felt safe in the last 6 years since I bought my house. I love Jack's Beach. Not like Miami, but it is definitely a home for me. I have lived here in peace and with wonderful neighbors, and unfortunately in the last couple months, there's been a change in the type of renters because they changed the type of went to a short-term rental. With the violations that have occurred, there's not one single point of contact, only multiple entities, and we continue to get the runaround. And they don't work on weekends. So we have nobody to help us when the prime time for renting is usually on the weekends. To add, most of these entities do not respond in a timely manner. I think it becomes becomes confusing and difficult for us to voice our concerns and for the entire picture to be seen when different entities look at each individual problem instead of the problems as a whole, because it is a whole problem, not individual violations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Card. Tim Wright.
Oh, it says Jim.
I'm sorry, Jim. My apologies.
Not Jim. Just say your name.
Tim Wright at 1684 Ocean Pond Court. I'm a cancer survivor of the top well, so I'm a neighbor out on the top corner.
I work for Jim. My wife and I have lived on Ocean Pond Court since 1990. We were one of the first families to move to the street when it was being developed. It's been a very pleasant, quiet, and very safe neighborhood. We felt very comfortable living here. Earlier this year, new owners of this home began renting short-term. At the beginning, most of the owners were families from out of state, and they were always respectful and pleasant renters. However, we've noticed in the last couple months, things started changing, and we started noticing much larger families staying here with more cars, and most of the crowds were Florida tags, making me believe there were more locals staying here than with the intentions of partying. Lots of people and lots of cars. And then worst case scenario occurred on 825. We and my neighbors were awakened by gunfire that left one man dead. If we're going to live with an STVR on our street, I would like to request the city to at least force the owner to comply with all the applicable rules and make sure he limits the number of overnight guests to the size of his house, which I believe is 3 bedrooms. Late night parties should not be allowed. Hopefully, he will do a better job vetting his guests that stay here in the future. We love this neighborhood because we feel comfortable and safe here. We do not want a bad STVR ruining our street. I'm okay, not thrilled, with STVR as long as they, the owners and guests, respect our neighborhood and not treat it as their little playground. This is the reason I have lived in Jack's Beach since 1956. I love this quiet community, the people, the beach, and the lifestyle. I want to keep enjoying my life here, but I can't if I have to keep monitoring and worrying who the new people are staying here and what are their intentions. Love, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Oh, Steve is attached to an agenda, and that is the last. Do you have any other? Okay, thank you. Moving on to agenda item A. Mr. Putnam.
I'm Putnam, Director of Beaches Energy. This project's been in process for a long time. We had to go out and bid more on several occasions, but it's a video wall which provides situational awareness to our operators. It also provides a big picture outlook of like where circuits are connected. Actually, it's a huge factor in keeping our guys safe out in the field. Also includes an upgrade of our the furniture and the flooring out at SCADA because the new system will not be supported by the current structure out there. So we have to increase the capacity of the flooring for weight and actually the capacity of the wall to handle these larger screens. Financial impact is $581,000. It seems like a lot of money. When I first came here, we actually used push pins on a map. So this is going from that to the state of the art where it's all on a video screen so they can see up to date, right to the minute what's going on with the system. We have recommend motion.
Thank you, Mr. Putnam. And a motion?
I move that we approve bid number 2122-11 to Visual Sound Inc. for SCADA video wall, furniture, and flooring upgrade.
Second. We have a motion and a second. Since we have some guests here, can you just give like the 30-second of what SCADA is so they know what you're talking
Yeah,
about?
so SCADA, it's where we operate our entire system from this SCADA. As you can see, it looks kind of dated. But they can operate every substation and switch in the field from this room. I know you can't see everything they see, but that's because you see those 2 small screens on the back. You know, think about a whole wall and being able to see every wire in substation and circuit and connection in our entire system. You can probably understand how that makes it easier for them to operate and keep people safe in the field. It's hard to describe. It's a big system.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from council? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Dumont?
Yes.
Councilmember Golden? Yes. Councilmember Jansen?
Yes.
Councilmember Mesa?
Yes.
Councilmember Nichols?
Yes.
Councilmember Stokes?
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman?
Yes, motion carries. Item D.
My name is Carolyn Woodard, and I'm the Regulatory Compliance Officer for Beaches Energy. We're requesting to have Gray Matters conduct an assessment that we're required to have from NERC SIP 6002. States that Beaches Energy is required to perform a critical cyber asset identification every 15 months. So we are requesting Gray Matters to conduct this assessment, and they will do a cyber risk, resiliency, and vulnerability assessment at the same time. This will also include the required 6-month post-assessment remediation support. The total cost on that is $29,319, with the deliverable being $26,654 and a 10% contingency. Request for action.
Thank you. And motion?
I move that we approve a piggyback agreement with Gray Matter for a operational technology OT cyber risk assessment in the amount not to exceed $29,319.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions from council? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Golden? Yes. Councilmember Jansen?
Yes.
Councilmember Mesa?
Yes.
Councilmember Nichols?
Yes.
Councilmember Stokes?
Yes.
Councilmember Dumont?
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman?
Yes, motion carries. Buchanan Odessa?
Yes.
Item C.
NERC SIP 6 requires Beaches Energy to implement a physical security plan in support of protecting the Gulf Electric system against compromise that could lead to the disoperation or instability of the Gulf Electric system. In order to provide the security plan, we need to have trenching done at each of our substations for the wire, the installation of the gateways at Sampson, Penman, Guana, and Fort Diego. We have 3 quotes that were solicited, and Vanguard was the lowest quote. The total cost of this project is $50,600, with $46,000 being the deliverable and 10% emergency fund, contingency fund. Sorry.
Thank you. And a motion?
I move that we approve trenching at 4 Beaches Energy Services substations by Vanguard Electrical Contractors to vary wire for the installation of the gate alarm for an amount not to exceed $50,600.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion or questions from council? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Jansen?
Yes.
Councilmember Mesa?
Yes.
Councilmember Nichols?
Yes.
Councilmember Stokes?
Yes.
Councilmember Dumont?
Yes.
Councilmember Golden? Yes. Mayor Hoffman?
Yes, motion carries. Item D. Is that you, Mr. Capoli? Me.
This is a request for final plat approval for a project located on the north side of 12th Avenue, which should be south, between 1st and 2nd Street south. The project has been reviewed by the Planning Commission under PC 2-22, and this had development approval review under SP 22-3 by staff. Staff has also reviewed the final plat through all the various departments, and we are recommending approval.
Thank you. And a motion?
I move that we approve the final plat for Villas of South and Jacksonville Beach.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments from council? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Mesa?
Yes.
Councilmember Nichols?
Yes.
Councilmember Stokes?
Yes.
Councilmember Dumont?
Yes.
Councilmember Golden? Yes. Councilmember Jansen?
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman?
Yes, motion carries. All right, I lost my place. Who's doing this next one? Oh, Scott.
Good evening, Ashley Bassett, CFO. Before you tonight, council, we're seeking a formal approval of an upgrade of our SelectCon IVR system. This is a system that allows our customers to make payments via the phone using e-check. As we briefed the council on August 9th, as we're working through our utility billing, our ERP upgrade, we learned that our provider, Tyler Munis, does not provide this service for e-checks over the phone. So our current provider is able to upgrade and integrate with Tyler Munis. The total cost of the upgrade is $56,925, which includes the purchase of a server and a 15% contingency for any kind of integration issues that might come up. And I'm available to answer any questions.
Thank you. And a motion on the first section.
I move that we approve upgrading the selection interactive voice response IVR system as part of the ERP implementation project and authorize the mayor and city manager to execute a maintenance agreement.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion, Ms. Golden?
Yes, Ashley, I know I asked you this earlier, but just for the benefit of my fellow council members, the proposal says that the city will be responsible for obtaining the required application programming interface and the appropriate licensing directly from Tyler Technologies. And could you tell us if there's any additional costs associated with that?
Sure. There were no additional fees as part of our whole ERP project. This was included, and so we've already actually paid for the interface with Tyler.
Thank you, that's really good to know.
Yay for good news. Yes. Any other questions? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Nichols?
Yes.
Councilmember Stokes?
Yes.
Councilmember Dumont?
Yes.
Councilmember Golding?
Yes.
Councilmember Jansen?
Yes.
Councilmember Meza?
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman?
Yes, motion carries. And the second part of
I move that we approve the Selectron Technologies, Inc. as the sole source provider for maintenance and upgrades to the Selectron IVR system.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments from council? Seeing none, Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Stokes?
Yes.
Councilmember Dumont?
Yes.
Councilmember Golding?
Yes.
Councilmember Jansen?
Yes.
Councilmember Meza?
Yes.
Councilmember Nichols?
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman?
Yes, motion carries. Item F. Mr. Fatigues.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Jason Fatigues, Parks and Recreation. I'm here tonight to beg forgiveness for an error I made. I'm going to take responsibility as the chair of the Special Events Committee. I had approved an application for a 2-day festival in September when our policy states that from the months of March through September, festivals are 1 day. When we discovered the error and informed the event producer, he had already made substantial investment in this, and so we're here to ask the council to allow that exception, and also to let council know that we've made some internal controls that should not allow this to happen again.
Thank you, Mr. Fatigues. And a motion?
I move that we approve an exemption to the special events policy to allow the Florida Fin Fest on September 18th September 17th and September 18th, 2022.
Second?
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Ms. Dumont?
Thank you. You answered the question, so I thank you for making sure that there is a way to make sure that this doesn't continue in the future. Thank you for adjusting your systems.
She loves systems. Anybody else? Ms. Golding?
I'd just like to mention that this event was a 2-day event last year as well, and so I feel that it's the only right thing to do is to approve this exception, so I'll be supporting it tonight.
Thank you. Any other comments? I just want to say, and I said this after the inaugural event last year, that this was a very, very well-produced event. It was reflective of, I think, the type of event that we're looking for here. It had informational booths about sea life and recycling and things like that. Great music, you could tell it was a very, very well-run event. So this is one of those kind of events that we need to be seeking out in our special event policy, and I'm really glad that it seems like we're supportive of going with the 2-day event in this case, especially since it's next weekend. So thank you for working so quickly to rectify that. Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Dumont?
Yes.
Councilmember Golding?
Yes.
Councilmember Jansen?
Yes.
Councilmember Meza?
Yes.
Councilmember Nichols?
Yes.
Councilmember Stokes?
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman?
Yes, motion carries. All right. The resolution. Thank you, guys. We'll give the Boy Scout troop a minute to go ahead and leave and prepare for Invocation. You're welcome. Thank you guys for the visit.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thanks for coming. Okay. Moving on to a resolution, Mr. Capoli.
As you know from the council briefing, there's been a lot of discussion about amending the requirements for restaurants to serve alcohol in the downtown area. At the last meeting, we discussed sort of the best practice of size versus number of seats. We took a look at that, and based on the comments we heard from the council, we're proposing 50 seats, 1,200 square feet, which appears to be a reasonable size to accommodate all the things the restaurant would need. After our initial review with council, we met with the City of Jacksonville, State Representative Dugan, and the attorneys from the City of Jacksonville, and kind of discussed the process. It turned out after that discussion and some review by the General Counsel's office that the City of Jacksonville actually doesn't have to be involved in our process. So now we are basically proposing an e-resolution, which we would take to the legislative resolution to allow us to pursue that exemption from the state law. I don't know if you have any questions, details of the process.
We'll go ahead and get the resolution read by title only, Madam Clerk.
A resolution of the City of Jacksonville Beach, Florida, expressing the City Council's support for local bill JB1 to be considered by the Duval County Legislative Delegation, creating a special zone in the City of Jacksonville Beach known as the Downtown Incentive Zone, so as to provide an exception to Florida Statute 561.20 subsection 1, Florida statutes for space, seating, and minimum gross revenue requirements for special alcoholic beverage licenses for public food service establishments within the downtown incentive zone, providing for adoption of recitals, repeal of prior inconsistent resolutions and council decisions, severability, and an effective date.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And a motion?
I move that we adopt resolution 2121-2022 expressing the City Council support for local bill JB1 to be considered by the Duval County Legislative Delegation, creating a special zone in the City of Jacksonville Beach known as the Downtown Incentive Zone, so as to provide an exception to 561.21 Florida statute for space, seating, and minimum gross revenue requirements for special alcoholic beverage license for public food service establishments within the downtown incentive zone.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Mr. City Manager.
Thank you, Mayor. Just wanted to point out for the council and for those who might be watching at home, while we're referring to this as a downtown incentive zone, a DIZ, it also matches up with the boundary that we have declared for the central business district as part of the downtown CRA. So we do have a graphic so that those in the audience and the council members can see that it lines up with the same boundary, which is 3rd Street A1A to the west, the ocean to the east, 6th north, and 2nd south as those boundaries. So we're just calling it a different name, but it's the same boundary as the CBD.
Thank you for that clarification. Mr. Nichols.
I'm going to be in favor of this, but, and I think this is outstanding. It's going to do a great thing for Jacksonville Beach. It's really going to allow us to have residents of Jacksonville Beach to be able to have small, locally owned restaurants in our downtown business district and get our community vested in our downtown area. Because my whole thought is, if somebody has a food truck, they can graduate to a small brick and mortar, where if you have to require 150 seats, it is just too much of a financial jump to be able to enter the market as a small business here. So I think this is outstanding, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what the community can bring forward with restaurants in our downtown area.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols. Ms. Golding?
Thank you, Mayor. Christian, so when does this need to be delivered to the Duval Legislative Delegation? What's the deadline?
I don't think we've gotten the date yet. Last conversation we had was, I believe, November was the closest they gave us, but they have to set that date. I don't know if they've done that yet.
Okay. The reason I ask is because in one of our briefings, the mayor had expressed interest in the CRA weighing in on this, and I spoke with Ms. Ireland today, and she said the CRA has not discussed this yet, and I feel that if it's not a rush, that it would be good for us to let the CRA at least weigh in on this before we approve it, just because this is in the area that they are focused on. I don't know, I want to at least give them the benefit of having the opportunity to provide their thoughts on it. And then likewise, I've gone back and forth on this because, you know, I know that there's been a lot of concerns expressed over the years about alcohol establishments, but this one, to me, I can see the value in it because we're talking about smaller businesses. But the other thing that makes me a little bit uncomfortable is I want to make sure that we put some things in our code so that we make sure that these businesses are not going to become restaurants in name only. We discussed that in the briefing, but I just want to make sure that we do that before we open up the floodgates, if there really would be floodgates, right? But before we open this up to the businesses. And so are we going to be able to put those protections in place before this would be opened up to people applying for alcohol licenses?
Okay, let me break that apart. So I did talk to Heather, and I believe the CRA meeting is going to be the 22nd. There's a workshop next week, so it's usually every 2 weeks. Not knowing the date for the submission, I couldn't say one or the other if that would delay things. As far as the impacts for downtown, I can say pretty much categorically right now, there aren't many opportunities to even open a restaurant in a space this size, because we really don't have many, and there's not a great deal of vacancies downtown at the moment. But if there are specific restrictions that need to be put into the code, that's something we can certainly do. As you know, we're going through a whole rewrite of the code at this point, and that's been one of the issues we've been discussing. It's an issue prior to this, and will probably continue to be. But we would have to discuss what those specifics would be as far as what those restrictions need to be.
Well, my desire would be for those to be in place before businesses are able to apply for the licenses. With these with the new relaxed restrictions as far as the size and seating. So do we think that would be possible?
It's certainly possible. I mean, the actual vote on this on the state side would be in November. This would just be the submission, and then they would have to write the whole bill. So there's quite a bit of time between now and actual, provided they adopt it at all, to be able to draft something for the council's review.
Okay, so I don't know if there's any other comments, but I would just like to make a motion that we defer this until after the CRA has had an opportunity to review this and weigh in on this proposed resolution.
We have a motion, I'm not hearing a second. Motion fails. Mr. Nichols.
As Councilmember Golding said, one of the key elements when I brought this forward is I really think we've got to be able to put in our code that if somebody's going to take advantage of this, to be able to get this liquor license, that they need to be operating as a true restaurant. And I think that they should not be able to get the extended hours past 12 o'clock. I think that is critical for me to make this work. That a real restaurant doesn't want to be open after midnight. So I think that's key that needs to get in the code.
Mr. Mesa.
I have to echo what my colleague just said. My biggest concern is just making sure that the restaurants shut down at midnight, don't stay open past midnight. I don't think they should get any after hours permit. There's no need. If they want to stay open past midnight, obviously no alcohol sales. But I do love all this. I'm very supportive of this. And like I said, I agree with Mr. Nichols.
Ms. Dumont.
Thank you. Currently, any restaurant can get an after-hours permit, correct?
I believe so, yeah.
Okay, and will this put the city at any kind of risk saying that these restaurants can't get the after-hours permit, when other restaurants can get the after-hours permit?
I wouldn't think so because
I guess that's a Sandy question.
Sorry.
Without the specifics, I'd say we have to tread very carefully about how we did this. If we had classifications, we might be able to do it without any problems. So we would have, just objective classifications as opposed to cherry picking.
Okay. And then finally, I understand Councilmember Goldring's concern with having the CRA, but I don't know what they can add to, what they'd be able to add at this point. I can see it maybe when it comes to looking at the, if it goes anywhere in Tallahassee, looking at the LDC and some code issues, but at this point, I don't know if they really will bring much depth to this decision here of our support for our delegates to fight for it in Tallahassee.
Ms. Golding?
Just in follow-up, my thinking is that, we want to be working with the CRA and not, I felt that it was an opportunity to work with the CRA and at least give them an opportunity to weigh in on it and not just, run full steam ahead without incorporating them in the process. That was the only reason why I wanted to, especially if there was no rush to get this done.
I don't see any other lights. As I was the one who suggested, talking to the CRA, and since that is going to be done somewhat retroactively, let's go ahead and make sure that it gets on at least a briefing agenda for them for discussion so that they know that this is happening, because it is happening on behalf of their city. And then the other items, this just really gets the ball rolling in terms of state legislation. The other items we can work out internally in terms of how this, if it's passed, how it's implemented. And that, I think that could be an area where they have some input maybe on items that we've already discussed, such as Mr. Nichols thought that this would preclude you from that after-hours permit. And maybe we can look into that to make sure that we have the legal authority. My understanding of that permit is that it's somewhat ours to give. So we just want to make sure we don't run afoul of any legal issues there. Seeing no other comments, Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Golding?
Yes.
Councilmember Jansen?
Yes.
Councilmember Meza?
Yes.
Councilmember Nichols?
Yes.
Councilmember Stokes?
Yes.
Councilmember Dumont?
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman?
Yes, motion carries. And just going forward with that, in terms of any delegation meetings, things that we need to do, I guess we'll discuss that going forward, but please keep us posted if you see any opportunities that we need to be taking an active role. And perhaps our Mayor Pro Tem might be a little more active.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, the final issue today is second reading. Is a second reading. That is a public hearing. So we'll start with, do you have any updates from staff?
Yes. So you all received a letter from the applicant with some proposed self-imposed conditions. Staff has really not had a lot of time to delve into them, so we would ask that if there is an interest in applying these conditions, that you might consider deferring it so we have some time to actually look at them.
Thank you. I will go ahead and not start the public hearing and see if there's anyone who would be interested in making a motion to defer. Ms. Dumont.
I make a motion to defer until our next meeting in 2 weeks.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to delay the issue. Ms. Dumont?
Yes, I received the email from Mr. Deaton. Thank you for your patience, from the applicant, for your patience for sitting here through this. I did have a couple questions, and I sent them to Mr. Rivoli. In one of them, at the letter that he sent, I wanted to know what ordinance it was referring to. It was actually the ordinance for Adventure Landing. Not for this case, so we just need a little bit more clarity, so I'm not sure that, I'd be more comfortable if we had 2 weeks where the planning department could look at this and Mr. DeVenow can double check everything before we vote on this.
Ms. Golding?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with what Ms. Dumont said. I do appreciate Mr. DeVenow, you working with Mr. Smith with regard to his concerns and putting forth some suggestions for conditions. But I too would like to take some time on this, and I would like to understand, at least have a copy of the ordinance that that you're referencing this would supersede.
Mr. Nichols?
I would like to just go ahead and move forward with this and pass on the first reading. If these are self-imposed additional restrictions, I think these can be hammered out if they're self-imposed. And the major, the one individual that had really questioned a lot of this, I got an email from him saying that he was satisfied with the concessions, and I'm fine moving forward with the second reading as it is.
Ms. Golding?
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify the second reading.
Mr. Jansen?
Yeah, it sounds like an echo up here, but I do appreciate Mr. DeVenow reconciling the issues that were at hand. My only question that I had in the back of my mind was also the ordinance as well, so I'd like to see clarification on that. And if our staff is asking for that, then I think we should allow them to have it.
Mr. Nichols?
Is this clarification something that that it's either Christian or Mr. DeVenow can give at this time?
Not, just a yes or no, can you give it at this time?
I think so, yeah.
Okay.
The ordinance that was referenced in the letter, which was 997760, was a PUD ordinance for Adventure Landing. I think it may have just been a cut and paste error that was carried over from other correspondence. I don't think it would be relevant here. The only thing that was approved in the past was parking variance, which we carry forward.
Thank you, Mr. Nichols.
Yeah, so based off that clarification, it's a scrivener's error. I don't see any reason why we wouldn't move forward at this time.
Any other comments? Ms. Dumont?
Could we have the applicant come up for one moment? Because if that's not the ordinance that he wants this to replace, I'd like to know what is.
Mr. DeVenow?
No, Steve DeVenow, 1 Pimp Drive, Suite 1200. No, I was doing this late at night last night. That last paragraph at the bottom of my memo should just, anyway, that whole section can just be deleted. That was a carryover, as Christian said, on a different matter. The only items that are at issue are items 1 through 9, which are pretty straightforward. I'm happy to explain them. I'm happy to talk about them and debate them. We went to a lot of lengths to meet with Mr. and Mrs. Smith over the weekend, talk over the holidays, work on the language. All of this stuff is self-imposed, and I think it's pretty straightforward. So we'd like the opportunity at least to discuss it tonight, let you make a decision on the merits before you just defer.
Thank you. I withdraw my motion.
Okay, the motion to defer this to our next meeting has been withdrawn. So we'll get back to where we were. Mr. Capoli?
I have some short comments then if we're going to discuss the specifics of those conditions. We had kind of two concerns, just glancing at them. One is that a lot of them are operational, not legislative in the sense of zoning, and enforcement would fall between potentially code enforcement and police department. Some of them we're not sure would be enforceable by us at all, and so I have some reservations putting these in the actual ordinance because it would then fall on the city to regulate, and the neighbor may ask the city to do things that's not capable of doing. The other was that we're in the process of doing this J bill to encourage reducing restrictions on restaurants and small businesses. This is actually more restrictive than would be applied to the rest of the CBD district. So it would make sense to have more of a cohesive application of the rules, and this becomes what was in essence an ordinance to address phased construction and parking becomes a really restricted area of the downtown as opposed to the rest of it, including properties immediately adjacent to this. So, although I understand that the neighbors' concerns, I think these conditions are potentially problematic for us.
Mr. Nichols, are you trying to make a motion? Okay, we're not really at questions yet, so since the motion to defer was withdrawn, we're back to the public hearing on the ordinance for second reading. Madam Clerk, will you read the ordinance by title?
An ordinance of the City of Jacksonville Beach, Florida, establishing a redevelopment district, RD zoning district, within the City of Jacksonville Beach, Florida, as provided under Chapter 34 of the Code of Ordinances of said city, conflicting ordinances, severability, and an effective date.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. This ordinance is for the redevelopment district RD rezoning of a property is before the council for a public hearing and consideration on its second reading under the laws of the state of Florida. An application to amend the zoning regulations for map governing a property is handled as a quasi-judicial proceeding. A quasi-judicial proceeding means that the governing body is now functioning in a manner similar to a court, with the mayor and council sitting as impartial decision makers hearing testimony and questioning presenters who are able to provide substantial and competent evidence to support their side of the issue. It is the duty of the council to arrive at sound decisions regarding the use of property within the city. This includes receiving citizen input regarding the proposed use on the neighborhood, especially where the input is fact-based and not a simple expression of opinion. It is the applicant's burden to demonstrate that his or her application is consistent with the Land Development Code and the comprehensive plan. If the applicant is successful in showing consistency, then it is up to the local government to produce competent, substantial evidence of record that the application should be denied. The council's decision on an RD rezoning application is based on the criteria set forth in section 34-347C3I of the Land Development Code. Each member of the council has been provided a copy of the criteria. In addition, the council has received a copy of the application and the staff, planning commission, and community redevelopment agency recommendations on this rezoning request. I will now open the public hearing on ordinance number 2022-8178. We do have a spokesperson for the applicant, Mr. Devenow.
Thank you again, Mayor Steve Devenow, 100 Drive, Suite 1200. Do you mind if I approach and give everybody a hard copy of what I emailed earlier today?
Sure thing. You can hand it to the clerk and she'll distribute it.
First of all, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to speak about these tonight. As I mentioned, the last paragraph was a mistake on my part, so I've crossed it off of the version that I've just handed out. So where we are in the process is that we had a recommendation of approval from the CRA with some conditions. We had a recommendation of approval from the Planning Commission with some conditions, and those conditions are reflected in the first three items that are in italics. Item number 1, item number 2 is the language that Heather produced in response to those conversations, and that was produced in a memo several weeks ago. So we haven't done anything different in number 1 and number 2 except cut and paste what Director Ireland wrote. Item number 3 would have allowed us to seek a bar as a use by seeking a conditional use approval. And Mr. and Mrs. Smith objected to that vehemently, and so we met with them. We had a long conversation over the course of several days, and we came up with the next conditions as a part of that conversation. Ultimately, we agreed to remove item number 3 and to not have bars as a permitted use at all in this RD rezone, which was a pretty dramatic change. We had started out asking for it as a use by right. After objections at the Planning Commission and CRA, we changed that to a conditional use, and now we've withdrawn the request completely for a bar because that's not the intent of this RD rezoning. The intent of this RD rezoning, as Mr. Popoli mentioned, was to prepare for phased parking and to have a phased development plan. So item number 4, which we discussed with Mr. Smith, is that in the original plan, we had parking right up against his building, right up against the western edge of his building on 5th. And what we did is we agreed to put a 10-foot landscape buffer in there and not park any cars up against his building until phase 3 and phase 4 were developed. Phase 3 or phase 4 developed. And he was fine with that. His main concern was that if that was the place where people came out of the restaurants or came out of the nearby bars in the area, that they would park next to his house and it would be loud. But if we had phase 3 or phase 4 built, that whole block would be developed and it wouldn't be as bad of a problem. So we agreed to provide, all number 4 does is says that we will provide a 10-foot landscape buffer between what we call the Sea Chasers lot and his building, and there won't be parking there. Number 5, he asked for a sign indicating that parking is available for patrons only. At the very beginning, his concern is that people would be parking there that weren't going to one of the restaurants or one of the premises in the vicinity, which we said we would of course agree to that. Item number 6, if you look at the drawings, the renderings, and I've got Joe Cronk here with me, who's the architect on the project, but if you look at the renderings that we provided, you can see that there's some outdoor dining on the ocean side of phase 2, and there's some outdoor dining on the interior of phase 2. If you look at the site plan view from up above, you can kind of see 4 umbrellas right in the middle. That's the outdoor dining on the back of phase 2. It's not really, I don't think it's on the exhibits that we filed originally. These drawings were done as a part of our conversation with Mr. Smith to illustrate to him where the exact impacts would be. So yes, in phase 2 there, in the lower left-hand corner, you can see some outdoor dining with some rectangles. Those up a little bit, right in that vicinity there. That outdoor dining, he asked that we shut that down at 10 o'clock at night. So that happens to be the place that's in the most close proximity to where he lives. And so we agreed to shut that down at 10 p.m. He also asked that the front of the building, that the outdoor dining on the front of the building would be screened from any adjacent residential use to the north. That's really an implementation of what's in the code already. There's some adjacency requirements. And so in the drawings, you can see that there's a screen and a screen wall that is between his property and the proposed phase 2 restaurant, which he loves that it's a restaurant. He just wants to make sure that there's a little bit of a screen between the 2 uses. Probably the best place to find that is going towards the back of the package. When you get to some of the ground level views, you can see there's a planted wall kind of on the third to last page, and there's also one that has a blue whale. If you look at the walls on that northern side of the boundary, there's a kind of a drawing of a blue whale on the side of that wall. Again, it just adds a buffer, and it's basically a recognition that we're going to implement what's in the code for screening between the second floor of phase 2 and on the front and the back going to the north. Item number 8, we're not going to have any live amplified music outdoors on the second floor. He asked for that so we could have acoustic music but no live amplified music. Again, just another consideration for his home that's located next door. And then finally, that we would use our best efforts to have the buildings abut each other. That's our intent. From some of the drawings, he couldn't tell if they were adjacent, so we told him that we would agree to that, so that the buildings would be as close as possible. He just didn't want there to be any space for people to get between the buildings and then jump out and harass pedestrians. So we made sure that we included that as a condition as well. I don't view any of these as being extremely onerous to enforce. I mean, the 10 o'clock timeframe is pretty straightforward. The sign is easy to see. Obviously amplified music upstairs. The screen and between the two properties is something that would get picked up during the development review process during the and obviously the proximity of the two buildings together, as well as the landscaping in the parking lot. So all in all, this took, I will say, several hours and lots of conversations over the weekend. Ultimately, I think he sent an email to all of you indicating his support of this project with these conditions. We haven't had anyone else offer any opinions other than the ones that we received at Planning Commission and CRA that are incorporated in the ones that Sarah wrote for us. So anyway, we appreciate, that's a quick summary of what's in the package, and we really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you all about it tonight.
Thank you, Mr. DiBenale. Now we'll open the hearing. You can go ahead and sit down for now. Open hearing for testimony from other interested parties. I do not have any cards. Does anybody here additionally wish to speak in favor of the application? Would anyone like to speak in opposition to the application? Would anyone like to just come up and talk about the application in general? City attorney or senior planner wish to respond to any of the comments by the applicant?
I do, actually. So, again, this is very preliminary, but just kind of going through their conditions. I think the first 5 are fine. They don't really change anything that we've already looked at or add any real implication to what we would have to regulate. One of the concerns I had was the different closing times for different parts of the building. Obviously, the general 12 o'clock cutoff is typical for downtown. It's an interior space, and I'm not sure how the police would necessarily regulate that or even know to. And again, those complaints are going to come to us, and then the police, maybe the officer, maybe hasn't been told that this one little spot would have to be checked at a different time. There's some ambiguous language about the screening on the second floor to reduce light and noise. I would just potentially want to see that explained a little bit better. The no amplified music, as you're all probably familiar, our permit is for our outdoor music, general permit or license is for acoustic and low volume amplified music. It doesn't bifurcate the two. So if they go and get that permit, they're legal to have amplified music. And again, there'd be difficulty in regulating that because it would fall on the operation of the particular restaurant manager. And then on the last condition, this question of commercially reasonable. We regulate the Florida Building Code as is required by state, and I don't know what that definition necessarily means. If the developer's taking his best effort, that's great, but again, I'd be worried that would come back on the building department to enforce reasonable efforts to construct the building in a certain spot. There may be reasons why it's not reasonable, and I have no idea what those would be, but those are kind of our general concerns.
Thank you. Mr. DiBenale, do you wish to respond to any of the testimony by staff?
Sure. So to make this easy, the thing that was most important to Mr. Smith was item number 3 regarding not having a bar use. So we're comfortable with the language the way it is, but if you wanted to make a change and delete numbers 8 and 9, we can agree to that with Mr. Smith outside the rezoning. We've already agreed, just so you know, we've agreed to provide him an easement, an access easement across the Sea Chasers lot so that he can do repairs on his building. That's not something that was appropriate in the zoning ordinance, but we've agreed to give him that easement. We have to negotiate, of course. But items number 8 and 9, we could take care of those outside of the zoning if that makes Mr. Popoli more comfortable. As far as the screening in number 7, your code requires a 6-foot fence or potted plants 2 feet wide every 3 feet. There's a standard in the code regarding screening between residential and commercial uses. And so if we wanted to add a reference to the code and just say, shall be screened in accordance with the land development code, maybe that would give Mr. Popoli a little bit more comfort, because we're not trying to do anything different than what the code requires for screening there. And then on number 6, regarding outdoor dining ending at 10 p.m., I don't think that would be difficult to enforce. The premises would be open, somebody could easily walk in and go up and see it. Again, I understand the concern, but there's a hard time. If he makes a complaint that there's something and there's food going on there at 10 o'clock at night, or somebody else does, I think it's very easy to check and very easy to enforce. So, in short, I think number 6 is okay. I think number 7, if we just change the words, instead, it shall be screened in accordance with the LDC, just add the words in accordance with the LDC from any adjacent residential, use to the north. I think adding those words would work, and then we could delete 8 and 9 if that's okay. I mean, if you prefer that. But we're comfortable doing all those things. We will be doing them whether they're in the zoning or not. We've made that agreement with Mr. Smith, and we're gonna live up to it.
Thank you, Mr. DiBenale. There's no one else wishing to speak on behalf of the application or in opposition. We'll close the public hearing. Before requesting motion on this ordinance, beginning with myself, each of the members is requested to indicate for the record both the names of persons and the substance of any ex parte communications regarding this application. And ex parte communication refers to any meeting or discussion with a person or citizen who may have an interest in this decision which occurred outside of the public hearing process. And these can be since our last meeting. I believe that I can speak for all of us that we received an email from Mr. Smith as well as an email from Mr. DiBenale this afternoon, which those were through our city email addresses, so they will be on record. Mr. Stokes?
Other than those two, nothing.
Nothing other than those.
Nothing other than those.
Those are the only 2 that I've had.
Nothing.
That's the only I've had.
Thank you. Let's see. Okay. That's yours. Okay, and can we get a motion?
I move that we approve ordinance 2022-8178 for the redevelopment district RD rezoning application for the gallery at Jacksonville Beach project on the 2nd reading.
Second?
Before opening the floor for discussion or questions by the council, please be reminded that our decision will be based on the criteria set forth in the Land Development Code, and the council is required to approve a clear statement of specific findings of fact stating the basis upon which such facts were determined and the decision was made. Okay, we'll open the floor for discussion. Mr. Nichols.
Mr. Rapoli, were you good with the changes of, I'm even fine with removing 6 if you think it's going to be a enforcement issue. Are you good with, well, first of all, are you good with removing 8 and 9 from the proposal?
Yes.
7 with the modification to just simplify it to say shall be in accordance with the LDC for screening?
That's good.
And then, I'm fine with removing 6, but how do you, would you like it in there or out?
I don't think it belongs in the zoning, personally.
Okay, then I think we should remove that one as well.
Ms. Foley?
My only comment is that several years ago when Home Depot had come before the Planning Commission and the City Council, there were a lot of conditions placed on that PUD for the Home Depot. And, my feeling is that if Mr. DiBenale is fine with leaving in number 6 with regard to the 10 p.m. for the restaurant, I'm perfectly fine with that. Like I said, with the Home Depot project, there were a lot of conditions. I want to say there were like 15 conditions that were placed on the development. And the good thing about it was that it addressed the concerns of the residents in the area. And so I would be perfectly fine with leaving 6 in. And any of the things that Mr. DiBenale said that they were comfortable with, I don't see why we wouldn't go ahead and approve it.
Ms. Dumont?
Thank you. I understand your concerns. With 6, we have our own police force downtown. So I think that somebody there can figure out at 10 o'clock, 'cause it's still kind of quiet there. At that time, they're not overly taxed, that they'd be easily, you know, Mr. Smith can flag them down if they're being rowdy or something's going on, and they can go on up and take care of that. I agree with Ms. Golding that we do have a lot of conditions, not just on Home Depot, and as on the planning commission, we put conditions on a lot of things. Of course, then the issue ended up being who was going to enforce all those conditions. But when people complain that the conditions weren't being met, you know, we could deal with that. So I'm comfortable with the removal of 8 and 9, rewording 7, keeping 6. And so this, while it's rezoning, this is also kind of doubling as the PUD, correct?
Yeah, an RD is basically just a PUD, yeah.
Right. And so if it's fine for us to do that in PUDs, I don't see why it wouldn't be fine for this to be done, even though it's a rezone. It sounds different. If we do it in one, we should be able to do it in the other. With the exception of the, as long as, and I don't know if there, when you said that you still have to negotiate with Mr. Smith, that there's like a legal you're a lawyer, of course there's a legal contract, to make sure that you're all, like, that everything is above board. So I'm comfortable with this, and I'm sure if Mr. Smith is not comfortable with this, I will have an email when I get home.
Mr. Nichols.
I'm going to make a motion to modify this then. I'm going to make a motion to modify this rezoning to remove items 8 and 9 and to modify 7 to say shall screen in accordance with the LDC, and we can leave 6.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Was that motion stated correctly? Everybody felt good about that one? Okay. Yes.
We had a second and we had decided.
I just wanted to make sure we weren't stating it in the wrong direction. Okay. Everybody's nodding. Okay. So we have a motion and a second to amend the original motion. Mr. Nichols, your light's still on. Did you have any?
I mean, I can rephrase it as.
No, it's if everyone's good with it, I'm good. I'm good. Any other discussion? Okay, Madam, Ms. Dumont.
I just want to, I know we're going to get out of here. I do want to thank the applicant very much for working with the city, and all of this is without raising the height limit. And so that is something that, this is a project that we're all very interested in, and we think that this is going to move it along. So I want to thank the applicant very much for his time and his patience and everything that the city has done. We work together.
Any other comments on the amendment as presented? Okay, so Madam Clerk, roll call on Mr. Nichols' amendment to the original motion.
Councilmember Jansen?
Yes.
Councilmember Meza?
Yes.
Councilmember Nichols?
Yes.
Councilmember Stokes?
Yes.
Councilmember Dumont?
Yes.
Councilmember Golding? Yes. Mayor Hoffman?
Yes, the amendment carries. And back to the original motion, is there any other discussion and questions? Along the lines of what Ms. Dumont mentioned, the renderings are beautiful. I hope it looks even a fraction as good as it looks on paper. And thank you for working with the neighboring residents and for really thinking differently about what our downtown area can be. Ms. Dumont.
I would like to point out on his renderings, and this is, I'm saying this for Ken Marsh, all of the little circles around the trees all match. So I know that's not up to you, but that's something that the city can work on to make this all happen.
Could you hear the sigh from the city manager next to me? I don't know if it was audible to everyone. Any other comments on the motion? Madam Clerk, roll call.
Councilmember Meza?
Yes.
Councilmember Nichols?
Yes.
Councilmember Stokes?
Yes.
Councilmember Dumont?
Yes.
Councilmember Golding?
Yes.
Councilmember Jansen?
Yes.
Mayor Hoffman?
Yes, motion carries. Please make sure you wish Chet a happy birthday, and our gift to you was a very full and productive agenda in less than 90 minutes as we